Now, on Wednesday, the 5th of February, marked a significant global celebration, World Read Aloud Day. Now, this observance shines a spotlight on the transformative power of literacy, highlighting its role as a fundamental human right, a catalyst for community building, and a potent tool for storytelling. In South Africa, where literacy development is fraught with unique challenges, now this day takes on added significance. So as we acknowledge the barriers that hinder literacy growth in our country, from language obstacles and limited access to books to unequal educational resources, we are reminded of the critical need to prioritize literacy development and ensure that every learner has the opportunity to unlock their full potential. We are now joined in studio by Zulaikha Goolam from the Disability Inclusion and Accessibility Program Manager at iSchoolAfrica. Zulaikha, very good morning. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning, Simhiwe, and good morning, South Africa. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, Zulaikha. You know, with South Africa, the South African education system, well, it doesn't have the best reputation, but I dare say that we have, our literacy rate is above average amongst our peers in the sub-Saharan African region. So with literacy being a fundamental human right, so how can we ensure that every learner in South Africa has access to quality education?
That's a brilliant question, because we need to ensure that it's not an option for us. And that is done through the involvement of the community, through the involvement of big stakeholders, corporates, and institutions like iSchoolAfrica, who are invested in making an impact in creating these differences in literacy, in language, and in education.
Yeah, and I'm quite curious to know, the kind of role that your organization, the Disability Inclusion and Accessibility Program, does in terms of enforcing literacy amongst learners in South Africa.
So we actually leverage technology. So we leverage digital books and technology in South Africa to give every single learner, no matter how rural, township, what school they're in, the best access to the quality education. And the reason for disability inclusion is because of all the accessibility features for your disabled learners that are available on the iPad.
And how is literacy development then enforced, especially in that kind of community?
So you actually don't even need an internet connection for it. Okay. So in those communities, they have complete access to digital libraries in all the native languages of South Africa. We ensure sustainability, we impact the teachers, we train the learners, and we really get involved in the community to make that impactful educational change.
Yeah, and then how do we support learners who are not necessarily fluent in the language of instruction?
Yes, so you should never focus on one language. You should always learn your multiple languages at the same time. And it's important that we allow our learners an opportunity to have that access to their books, to their learning resources in their home languages. And that is what we do at iSchoolAfrica. We give every learner an opportunity to learn in their home native language.
And having said that, what strategies are employed to increase access to learning or educational material?
Okay, so firstly, for iSchoolAfrica, we rely on corporate sponsors and individual sponsors to get the technology out to the learners. And then on the devices, for quality education, we have apps that are all regulated according to CAPS. So the learners their learning is being supplemented by the iPad, and it's something that interests learners. It's something that encourages them. And yeah, that's how we ensure that the education they're getting is curated, inclusive, and really empowering to those learners in those areas.
And how do you encourage parents and caregivers to encourage the culture of reading aloud? And has it been proven that reading aloud actually, fosters literacy amongst learners?
I actually love this question, and you are right. So there has been lots of literacy. The long-term effects of reading aloud to children improves test scores, it improves language, it improves your higher order thinking skills. It also fosters such an important bond and relationship between the reader and the listener. So parents should absolutely read to their children. It promotes language. It also passes down cultural stories and creativity. We really like to use the iPad because of the interactive books. So learners get a multi-sensory approach. They can hear, they can see, they can touch the pages, and it's really engaging for that bond between the two, the reader and the listener, and also all those additional skills that you're targeting through reading.
And then how do we foster a relationship between schools, between communities, between parents and caregivers to ensure that the implementation of this initiative is seamless across the board?
So we believe that empowered teachers, empowered communities are able to empower their learners. So we focus on that. So we start with empowering the stakeholders, such as the community members, the family members, and then from there, they then empower the learners. And we do it through complete involvement and immersement in the community. So we are there, we are with the people, we are with the children, we understand what their needs are, and we then cater to those needs. So that it's not just giving technology, it's providing the access and the quality to access education.
And given the disparities in the educational resources, you did mention earlier on that all you need is just the internet connection for you to be able to to implement the whole literacy scenario. How do we ensure that the disadvantaged communities also get a piece of the pie in terms of the implementation of this initiative?
So it's actually not, you don't need an internet connection on your iPad to have access to the literacy resources, and that's the best thing.
Okay.
So all we need is a sponsorship, and we take the technologies to your most rural and township schools. We take the training, we empower the learners. So you don't need an internet connection to have access to your digital libraries, to your books in your different languages, which is brilliant, and especially for your disabled learners, because then they have accessible educational resources.
Okay. And then speaking of the disabled learners, what other resources that cater to them specifically?
There are multiple resources on the iPad, including connecting your hearing aids, eye tracking devices, which are built in. And these are all traditionally external items that individuals will have to buy to support learners, especially learners with dyslexia, deaf learners, blind learners. So yeah, that's a lot. I can tell you so much about the accessibility.
I'm quite curious to know, you mentioned blind learners. Like, how do they access an iPad? Like, is it Braille inspired?
So you can connect a Braille device, but there's actually options where, so we train the individual, and there's options where the device is spoken to you and you control it via your voice.
Right.
And if you actually see the impact, even in our rural and township schools where we go to, you see a disabled learner who was previously never able to even send a message, able to do it with just, for example, their eyes or just their voice. And it is the most impactful thing and empowering thing that you'll ever see.
Great initiative.
Incredible.
Lovely chatting to you, Zulaikha. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Great
everyone.
stuff. Well, that was Zulaikha Goolam from the Disability Inclusion and Accessibility Program Manager at iSchoolAfrica, talking about the World Read Aloud Day, which celebrated literacy as a human right, community builder and storytelling tool.